I've just returned from my first visit to Myanmar. Many of us grew up calling it Burma, and it's still called that in some circles. Myanmar is a beautiful country, filled with beautiful people, many different ethnic groups in the different states. However beautiful the country, there is a tragic element to it today as a result of Cyclone Koman that devastated the northwest part of the country with very heavy flooding earlier this year. Over 1 million people have been affected. Over 1 million acres of rich farmland have been covered by 1 meter to 1.5 meters of silt and other debris coming down from the mountains, destroying farmlands and the livelihoods of the people who used to live and work in that area. It was tragic for me to drive down the main road from Kalemio and see all of the people living in makeshift housing along the side of the road. A UNICEF spokesman said it was one of the most dangerous playgrounds for children that he had ever seen. And we found the villages covered in mud, farm carts buried up to their axles. And as my colleague pointed to a mark on the second story of a building, I realized that that had been the high water mark of the floods, and no wonder everything was in such disarray. The impact on people's lives has been tremendous. One day my colleagues took me out to see a community that had been very badly affected by the flooding. We never made it because after driving for a couple of hours up into the country, we came to a raging river and the bridge had disappeared. It was something to see people desperately trying to get across the river. Some enterprising young men had set up a service to carry motorcycles back and forth. You could get this done for about $7 to $10 depending on the size of your motorcycle. And it was sad to see the effect on the bustling economy of the area by just the loss of one bridge. And this was just a small picture of the devastation that the floods had caused in the area. When the floods first occurred, ADRA Myanmar staff and other volunteers made their way quickly to the area, first of all by air because the roads had been cut off by the flooding, and started to provide immediate assistance to people in terms of shelter materials, food and water. And they continue to do this. But this tragedy is going to be a long-term one as people's livelihoods have been taken away from them, their farms snatched away. And so ADRA is also looking at programs to assist people in that transition period. The response of ADRA Myanmar, especially as supported by ADRA Canada, has been made possible in large part by a generous grant from the International Humanitarian Assistance Unit of what we call DFATD, the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. Their prompt support and their issuing a grant to ADRA Canada has made many of the response activities in the area possible. And so the Canadian government grant through ADRA Canada, along with donations made by ADRA Canada supporters, have made possible a significant improvement in the situation.